Are you a real estate investor looking to start your first flip? Are you a passive investor looking for the next opportunity? Regardless of your situation, our mission is to help everyone work towards their unique version of financial freedom. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Conduit Capital podcast. My name is Adam Burrow, and today we are going to be talking about how did I get here? If you listen to our previous podcasts, you may have heard Tom allude to an interesting story as to how I came to work for him. And so today we're going to go over that because it has some twists and turns in it, and it was kind of a unique beginning. And I think it also presents an interesting way of looking at breaking into a new industry if you're a young person and have something you might be interested in pursuing but don't know where to start. So the beginning of our story actually starts back in winter of 2020, probably 3 months before the COVID shutdowns initially started. Tom and I had known each other for quite a while through some of my family members, but we were both attending a meeting by one of my mentors that was put on in Huntsville, Alabama. And prior to this meeting, I actually reached out to this previous mentor of mine because I had just left my first job out of college. So when I reached out to my mentor, I asked him, hey, I'm looking forward to coming to your event, and I'm actually between jobs right now. Is there anyone you think I should talk to? Or is there anyone I should be interested in talking to? And he said, oh, let me think about it, but why don't you just come to the event and I'll introduce you to people as they come up. And if you see anyone that you really want to meet, then I'm happy to make the introduction. So that was how it started. And I showed up to the event. And on the first day, when my mentor was giving an introduction to the event and the things that were going to be discussed and background on the company that was putting on the event, he actually gave me a shout out and said to the room, just so everyone knows, our previous intern, so I actually worked for this mentor, our previous intern is looking for a job, and you'd be stupid not to hire him. So clearly I must have done a pretty decent job at my internship, but I was very flattered by the compliment. And it was that conversation that started my working relationship with Tom. So after that meeting, we were conversing outside the lecture hall, and Tom came up to me, and I knew him, but he said, so I want to start a lending company and I want you to run it. And as they say, the rest was history. That was where our relationship initially started. And from there, over the next couple months, we went back and forth with some starting points of how the company would start. And there was also some lending processes in place that weren't super fleshed out, but we were still kind of trying to figure out our niche in the space. And obviously it was during COVID, but basically the month of June hit. And I decided at that point, I was really interested in working from Tom and learning from Tom, because on top of the ability of managing this lending company, he also had a lot of other companies that did a lot of really cool things that I wanted to learn about. So I ended up reaching out to Tom and I said, I'm really interested in learning more about what you do and what your companies do. And I feel like I'll be able to really dive deep into this lending company only if I'm there in person with you. So in June, I decided to move down from Michigan to Indiana to give this the old college try, to really try and make this work. However, at the time, I wasn't a hired employee. So part of my bid to start working full-time for Tom was that I would work for him for free for a couple months or until an undisclosed amount of time. And at the end of that period of time, if I wasn't providing value, then we could part ways. But if I was providing value, then take me on as the manager of your lending company. So I'm happy to say that it took about 3 months. And once we kind of had a good idea about how we worked together and what the company was going to look like, he brought me on full time. And I actually had a couple different roles when I started at Conduit Capital. And this was actually even before it was Conduit Capital, but I worked in our lending company, coordinating loans. I also worked on our acquisitions team for our turnkey company, where we would acquire houses that we would then rehab and sell to investors. So I got a ton of amazing experience buying lots and lots of houses in Northwest Indiana. And then I also was on the marketing team the marketing department oversaw all of Tom's companies. Then as the lending company started to grow, and we were able to do lots of deals and we were able to grow our network, more of my time was needed to be dedicated to the lending company. So I ended up passing my role off on the acquisitions team to dedicate myself fully to the lending company. And then I also still currently oversee all of our marketing for all of our companies. After that, we started growing. We started doing more and more loans, adding new lenders, adding new borrowers. And we started getting a lot of feedback from lenders that were being paid back that while they enjoyed the passiveness of the investments that we were offering as a lending company, they were craving something a little more passive, which led us to then start the fund. And the fund has now been operational for a year this month, which is March. We're continuing to add new investors, and we are always growing our network of borrowers as well. And now we're kind of living in present day and working from day to day and continuing to grow the fund. So that's essentially the story of how Tom and I started working together. And I was so grateful for the opportunity to work for such a successful entrepreneur who really lives by his values and wants to make other people money. He wants to help his investors achieve financial freedom. And he also really wants to help people who borrow money from him achieve their version of financial freedom. Really, he wants to make people money on both sides. And there's no ounce of greed in him whatsoever, which I think is a very rare trait to find. Now, the overarching point of my story with Tom, I think that's important to mention, especially for young people in the workplace. If there's an industry that you're interested in cracking into or that you're interested in learning more about, find someone who's doing something that you think is really cool and either get an introduction or introduce yourself and ask to work for free. I would say probably 90% of people will take you up on that free labor offer, especially if the free labor that you're offering is good free labor. Then when you're working for free, obviously you won't be making any money, but the trade-off with not making money is that you're gaining incredible experience. You're able to gain inside insight into that industry to decide if it's something you really want to do. And if you find out that it is something you want to do, then you can push for that full-time position and show how you can really provide value to that company. So I hope this was really helpful, and I hope it gives you a little bit of insight into how I got to where I am working for Conduit Capital. And if you're out there looking for a job or interested in, like I said, getting into another industry, might present a new way of getting in there that you might not have thought of before. So this has been episode 5 of the Conduit Capital podcast. How did I get here? As always, make sure to follow us on all of our social media. Leave comments on our YouTube if you had any questions or if anything really resonated you. We love seeing all of those comments. And I will see you on the next podcast. Thank you. And remember to be a conduit, not a bucket. Thank you for tuning in to our podcast today. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to stay up to date with all of our latest content, please follow us on social media. You can find us on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram at Conduit Capital Podcast. We love hearing from our listeners, so feel free to send us a message, leave a comment, or share your thoughts with us.